In America, we're taught to trust the badge. The police are supposed to protect us, serve us, defend us. But what happens when the person with the badge becomes the very danger we fear? A devoted husband, a loving wife, a quiet home in a small U.S. town. One night shattered by gunfire. When the smoke cleared, a woman was dead, and her husband, the man who loved her most, was dragged away in handcuffs. Police said it was simple. Another domestic violence case. Another husband who lost control. But it was all a lie, because the real killer was standing in uniform. This is the chilling story of a trigger-happy cop, a deadly cover-up, and how the truth came out only after an innocent man's life was destroyed. It was a crisp autumn night in a quiet Midwestern neighborhood. David and Lisa Turner, high school sweethearts, married for over a decade, were winding down at home. She was a nurse. He worked at a local auto shop. By all accounts, theirs was an ordinary, happy life. But in America's small towns, even the most peaceful lives can unravel in seconds. Neighbors heard raised voices, then, suddenly gunfire. 3 sharp cracks split the silence. When the smoke cleared, Lisa was lying on the ground. Her husband, David, was over her body, screaming for help. And then came Officer Blake, a cop with a reputation one locals quietly called Happy Trigger. Instead of rushing to help the wounded woman, Blake aimed his gun at David. Within minutes, the narrative was set. Blake claimed he had arrived just in time to see David in a rage. He accused him of shooting Lisa during a violent dispute. David was cuffed, shoved into a squad car, and treated not as a grieving husband, but as a murderer. The next morning's headlines were damning. Local man arrested in wife's killing. The officer's story stuck. For now, David's nightmare began the moment those cell doors slammed shut. He had lost his wife. He had lost his freedom. And now, the world believed he had pulled the trigger. In the eyes of the media, he was guilty. His face was plastered across local news as the jealous husband turned killer. At work, his job disappeared. Friends pulled away. Even some family members began to wonder, had he really done it? But David had never been violent. Neighbors vouched for him, describing him as quiet, reserved, the kind of man who mowed his lawn every Saturday and never raised his voice in public. Yet none of that mattered, because one man, a cop, had sworn under oath that he saw David commit murder. And in America, the badge carries weight. While David sat in a cell, broken and grieving, Officer Blake was praised as a hero who had stopped a domestic abuser. But there were cracks in his story. Cracks so deep they would soon swallow him whole. It started small. The forensic report quietly contradicted Blake's account. The bullet that killed Lisa didn't match a close-range domestic struggle. Instead, it came from a distance consistent with a police-issue weapon. Second red flag. No gun was ever recovered from David. Not in the house. Not on the property. Nothing. Third, a neighbor's testimony. She told investigators she saw David moments after the gunshots kneeling beside his wife, screaming her name. She saw no violence, no struggle, just a man in shock. And then, the smoking gun. Blake's body camera. At the exact moment of the shooting, the footage cut off. Blake claimed it was a malfunction. Investigators later found it had been turned off manually. Why would an officer disable his camera unless he had something to hide? The cracks were no longer cracks. They were a gaping hole in a deadly lie. As investigators dug deeper, Blake's past came to light. Complaints from citizens, a reputation for aggression, at least 2 prior incidents where he pulled his gun unnecessarily, each one swept under the rug. But this time, there was no rug big enough to hide under. Ballistics confirmed. Lisa was killed by a bullet from Blake's service weapon. Gunshot residue tests proved David hadn't fired a single shot. The so-called domestic violence call had been nothing more than a tragic mistake, and a desperate cover-up. Months after being wrongfully jailed, David's charges were dropped. He walked out of prison a free man, but his freedom was bitter. He had lost his wife. He had been branded a killer. He had buried his life behind bars. Blake, meanwhile, was arrested, charged with murder, obstruction of justice, and perjury. His mugshot, once a symbol of authority, now marked him as a criminal. In court, prosecutors described him as a trigger-happy cop who chose lies over accountability. The jury agreed. Blake was found guilty. His career and his freedom ended in the same way he had tried to destroy David's. David received compensation for his wrongful imprisonment, but no amount of money could give him back what he lost. His wife was gone forever. The time stolen from him could never be returned. The town that once judged him now stood by him, outraged at the system that had betrayed them all. Protests followed. Demands for accountability rang louder. How could a man sworn to protect use his badge to destroy an innocent life? How many other cases like David's had been buried? The case became a warning to America. Trust can be broken, even by those sworn to protect it. A reckless cop, a deadly lie, and a husband who almost lost everything. The truth came out, but only after months of injustice. And it leaves us with one haunting question. How many more innocent lives are being destroyed by the very people we're told to trust?